They were never policies that were generally for the entrepreneur class as a whole. All these things are behind us. We have insolvency code. We have taxes more or less settling. Of course, as a chartered accountant, I will put the hat and say you can still further tweak here and there. But the macro picture that you wanted, Arnab, is that it is the sweetest spot that we can ever have in the Indian economic macroeconomic history of this country.
No, you saw the economic survey. We all saw the economic survey. I don't know what we thought about it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I thought it was conservative also, Ashish. I thought it was conservative. They are saying fiscal broad range, such a broad range, right? 6 to 6.8%. Why such a broad range, fiscal? Are they lowering expectations, Ashish?
Arnab, so Arnab, just before you walked in, I mentioned about the outlook and the roadmap which has for this budget that the economic survey has laid. We are looking, I mean, the people are fixated with the fiscal deficit number, but I think there are innumerable, tailwinds as far as India is concerned. I mean, just take a look at it. Inflation has been coming down. So
let's talk about fiscal deficit. Let's talk about fiscal deficit. I want to take you up on fiscal deficit. I think Nasir also wants to come in maybe on that. So my question is, will there be a moderated fiscal deficit target? You know, fiscal deficit been growing past few years, maybe because of the pandemic, Nasir. This time, will the finance minister take a more moderated approach from the heights of 9% or more in 21 to ensure some kind of a delicate balance between building growth momentum and retaining fiscal prudence? Or will we say, let's just grow, let's just build, let's just spend, you know? What do you think?
Good morning, Arnab. Great to be back on your show, and wish you and the Republic team all the very best for the new year. So, before, I mean, that's a fantastic question you raised. See, I think if you have to look back at the historical numbers to get some idea on gross borrowings for the central government and for India is concerned. So, there is no doubt that there has to be a lot of strike a right balance, Arnab, between your fiscal number, deficit number, which is going to come out. Now, I'll give you certain numbers, which I was going through yesterday as well, Arnab. Our gross borrowing for the next fiscal year, and this is from a report which has come out across some 45 odd economists, are projecting a number of close to about 16 trillion rupees. So in terms of dollar terms, it's about $198 billion. Now, obviously, that is higher than the estimated number, Arnab, because the estimated number for this fiscal, for example, was 14.2 trillion rupees. Now, if you look at historical debt, right from the 1970s, the last 50-year average, we've always been between 4 to 5%.
Yeah.
But the point to be noted here is that we didn't have a COVID-like situation in the past. We've had a situation where in 2019, all the way end of 2019, all of last year, we saw the government putting out doles, putting out money in the hands of the citizens, certain sectors like MSME, SME. So obviously, I think the number is going to be far more higher than the average, and our sense is that this is going to be somewhere between a 6.8 to a 7.2% odd number.
Yeah.
I told you the estimated number is about 16 trillion rupees. To put another perspective in place, Arnab, when the Narendra Modi government came in 2014, our fiscal...
One minute. Question being, I'm aware of those numbers, but in the last 2 years, and by the way, Jim Rogers is joining us from Singapore, Abhishek. He's chairman of Rogers Holdings. He loves China, hates India, and I fight with him every single budget morning. And he should be changing his opinion now. He should be changing his opinion because China has become the black hole of darkness in the world economy, being propped up by a resurgent India. Jim?
Good morning. I love India, I love China, and I love Arnab.
That's okay. No, but have you changed your opinion or not over the last 1 year?
Well, I'm bullish on China. I think China is growing well, and I'm bullish on India. as long as India does the right thing. I mean, building big deficits is not good for India. India cannot become the great country it should be if it has big deficits and builds up debt.
Sorry, can you tell me that again? What exactly is your problem? Because what do you want the fiscal deficit? He wants the fiscal deficit to be 1%. He doesnn't want us, MR, the problem with him is he doesn't want us, to spend. He doesn't want India to spend on infrastructure. He doesn't want India to build the roads, to build the highways, to build the competitive infrastructure. He doesn't realize that same fiscal deficit that he's talking about is the very reason why we have a universally successful vaccination scheme, whereas his country is falling down the black hole of endless COVID cycles. So I think, Emma, let's take Jim on a little bit out here. Every single budget morning he does this from Singapore. He is what I call an institutional short seller. He is a short seller. He is on China's side. No, MR fiscal deficit. I'm tired of these people from foreign countries teaching us how to run our economy. Yes, MR.
Let me tell Jim,
MR, go for it, MR.
Jim, listen.
Go for it, MR.
Fiscal deficit, don't be like an economics professor.
Yeah,
in the
a bad
Indian
economics
context,
professor.
Yeah, in the Indian context, it is becoming irrelevant. You understand our debt to GDP ratio is still manageable. It's less than 7. You are talking about countries which have more than 250, 300% and doing whatever they are doing. We have a robust revenue. You see that the budget estimates are being exceeded year on year in these troubled times. And we are collecting more money from our people. We are spending more money on the infrastructure. We are putting more money where you always wanted it. And when it is happening, you come and crib that the fiscal deficit is high. I don't understand. Apart from what malice that Arnab alludes to you, I don't see any sound economics in what you say, sir.
Well, I will repeat to you that throughout history, countries that debase the currency and build up big debts ultimately pay the price. India has been a great country in the past and can be a great country in the future, but not if you're irresponsible and just spend a lot of money. Of course, I love for you to
define irresponsibility.
Don't.
Can I have the guests on the left-hand side of the screen? Define irresponsibility.
I strongly object to that word irresponsible. We are spending the most responsibly. And how do you say the capital expenditure? There is infrastructure pipeline that is going on, which is 100 lakh crores. And you tell me what is wrong in spending on that? How does irresponsibility fit into the Indian infrastructure pipeline? Explain to me that.
Well, I don't know how old you are, sir, or whether you have children or not, but if you worry about the future, you will not take this approach. You will try to be more restrained and build up your sound economy. I'm all for infrastructure.
You mean to say America doesn't do it? American debt is $31 trillion.
In the future, but
American debt is $31 trillion.
Now.
American debt is $31 trillion, sir. How do you explain that? When American GDP is hardly 20, American debt is more than $31 trillion, US federal debt. How do you explain that?
Ashish Wakankar also coming in. Ashish, yes, go on, Ashish.
I'm sorry.
Go on, Ashish. Go on, Ashish.
No, I'm sorry. MR, you mentioned that America's debt is $31 trillion. You add to that the unfunded liability that they have, it's another $93 trillion. So you're looking at, so when somebody says this, and with all due respect to you, sir, Dr. Rogers, with all due respect to you, I don't really care about, it's not my business to comment on America, but I'll still give two numbers over here. America's total debt to GDP as a percentage of America's GDP is around 300%, and America's total debt to the global GDP is around 80-85%. I don't even know how and when, or if at all, they are going to even pay back. But that's none of my concern.
Ask him American inflation prices. Ask him the inflation rate in America, Ashish. Ask him the inflation rate in America. And no, tell him, ask him about the inflation rate in America.
Yeah, it's the first time.
I do not want India to wind up
No,
like
this is the first time in the last 30 years that I have been in this in the markets. I had never in my wildest dream imagined that India's inflation will be lower than the developed world. I had never imagined India's inflation will be lower than US, UK, and most of the developed world. And I think that is remarkable. The quality of fiscal deficit is all that matters, Dr. Rogers. That and we are not spending irresponsibly. There is a dedicated infrastructure pipeline. There is productivity-linked incentives which have been given, and that has been done out of rationalization of petroleum subsidies. It's one of the most rational way in which the money has been spent. Plus, this is an exceptional year in which you had food and fertilizer subsidies adding, and which came as a rude shock because of the Ukraine crisis, and hence you have a 6.4. But as you move towards next year, you will see food and fertilizer, subsidy going down because of the inflation, and you will see fiscal deficit come down to around 5.8. We are, as per the set glide path, going to achieve 4.5% fiscal deficit by FY26. I have not, and Arnab, if he gives me 2 minutes, I will explain the real bonanza that is coming India's way through the nano urea that the government has gone upon. We could actually be staring at, in the next 5 to 10 years, at abolishing entirely the fertilizer subsidy. Believe me, the finer parts is something, Dr. Rogers, you probably have missed. So the only difference of opinion I have.
No,
with you
I like this. No, don't. You're being too polite. You're being too polite. Sohail also wants to come in. Abhishek wants to come in. I would just say, two small points. The national debt of the US has increased every year over the last 10 years. And Jim, you're totally aware the United States has hit its $31.4 trillion legal limit on borrowing. So the United States is an economically illegal country in terms of its own borrowing numbers. Please understand.
Yes.
Jim, you agree or not? Jim, you agree or not?
I'm not saying the US is doing a good thing. I'm saying I do not want India to wind up like the US and like the UK.
Oh, we are not.
These were countries that were very rich and they went bankrupt. You want to do that?
Just to add some numbers, our debt as a proportion of GDP went up to about 90% because of the slippages that happened during the pandemic years. It's back to 80% now. So 85% now. So we are doing fine. We are controlling it. The government is aware of it. The government is absolutely in control of
this
it.
Fiscal deficit thing, they are trying to say, I want to go to Sohail. This is what all the cynics try to do. They try to tell you are a macroeconomically unstable country. No, we are the most stable country macroeconomically. Our fiscal deficit will go down. It went over 10% only because of the pandemic. In fact, the debt of the states is also expected to ease. That is according to the Reserve Bank of India. So viewers, if you're watching today, have confidence. Have confidence. Take on people like Jim Rogers. Destroy their arguments with ease. And over, PK Basu is joining us this morning. And Sohail wants to come in as well. Sohail.
Jim, let me tell you 3 things about India. India is like the bumblebee. Aerodynamically, the bumblebee isn't supposed to fly because of its structure. But the bumblebee doesn't know that it flies happily. We will continue to soar in spite of all your macroeconomic, all your theorizing. Number one. Number two, John Maynard Keynes, who came from your profession, said in the long run, we are all dead. So let's not worry about what will happen 100 years ago. Number 3, why are we different? We are different because we have a consumptive economy. We don't have to rely on other countries to buy our arms. We don't have to create wars between countries in order to sell armaments. We don't have to do all these cheap tactics. We're in a great place. Respect that great place. You're in Singapore. You don't have any freedoms. I mean, you can barely, even your signal is weak. Even your internet is weak. So, we've come a long way. Give us credit. I love the fact that you're empathetic towards us. I love the fact that you care for us and you don't want us to fail. We won't fail. We need people who understand the realities of India, not the realities of economics. India is a country. It's not a classroom. We need people to understand who are the practitioners and who are the recipients of any economic benefit. This is not a university classroom where you take out a book and say, oh, blah, 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 this is why you should fail. Having said all of this, Jim, I totally agree with you about responsibility. This government and this country has shown greater fiscal responsibility in the last 8 years than we have shown in the last 75. So cut us some slack. Give credit to India. We have transformed from a nation of shopkeepers to a nation of entrepreneurs. We've got progress through digitization. We are slowly replacing China as the manufacturing hub of the world. You know, it takes a lot to change a nation, a lot of time. We're doing it in double quick time. Respect that. And as far as fiscal deficit is concerned, you know, there's an old saying, with forms of government let fools contest, that which is governed best is best. Today, what is best for India is public spending. What is best for India is money coming to the hands of people who can then aspire to be like Jim, live in Singapore with very poor internet signals and still comment on the world. On that note, have a great day,
And from Singapore to Uruguay, PK is also joining us. But before that, from Singapore to Uruguay, and joining us is Dr. Andrew Ferris, he's CEO of Ecognosis Advisory Limited. He's been a regular voice on our budget programs. Dr. Andrew Ferris, thank you very much. You know, he has been, he analyzes asset markets with a particular focus on Asian economies. And he's been teaching at the London Metropolitan University and the City University of Hong Kong, authored several books. A fantastic person. Dr. Ferris, now budget day in India, you know, progressively less important than it used to be as we grow into being a bigger economy. And we don't just look at these annual regulatory checks to determine the direction of our economy. But I want you to tell us the big picture. We are no longer looking at recovery, while China has just begun reopening to the world at a time when even its industrial policies have contracted in 2022. Now, question to you is, do you think the global market's more leaning towards India? And we've been aggressively pushing policies to emerge as some kind of a balancing force to China. Do you think the budget can do anything in that direction? Dr. Ferris?
Actually, no, all right, because the budget represents a relatively small amount of the overall spending. I'm very interested in two areas. One, I want to see how much the capital part of the budget is going to increase. It took nearly 20% last budget. And the second point, that's going to be very tricky. I want to see defense spending. Asia is a hive of defense spending. India cannot be lagged behind. And also India, you know, is the third biggest importer of arms in the world. It's very interesting to see what the politics and the economics of the defense in this budget is going to be. Right now, I'm advising all my clients that the money is going to be made next year in equity markets that are connected with defense, because the world, whether we like it or not, is spending a lot of money on arms. It might be legally reprehensible, but that's the reality of it. And India is a major area in that. It's a major knot in that. I'm very, very aware of the morality of the issue, but I'm looking very carefully at what India is doing.
From a broader perspective, just before you came in, and the question always goes, you know, there's a general election in India in 2024. Okay, you have a question. I think Dr. P.K. Basu wants to come in before that, Andrew. Dr. P.K. Basu is the chief economist of ICICI Securities. He's the author of the great book, Asia Reborn. I think he wants to either make a comment or come in on what you said. Yes, P.K.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you talk about defense as being really important. And India has actually done some interesting things on the defense front. There is serious import substitution going on. You know, India has been very dependent on imports of defense equipment from Russia. But over the last 4 or 5 years, and you know, continuing every year, there is a list of items that are essentially banned. You can't import them, and instead it's being produced at home. So increasingly, I think there will be a need to focus on some of the Indian defense manufacturers that are emerging. It's a long haul, India has been very import dependent for its defense equipment, but we are now in the process of beginning to see a serious amount of successful import substitution, and
But
I
that's
think
going to
you
take
have to look at
time, PK.
some of the Indian stocks.
Some of that stuff goes into
focused
R&D.
and
Abhishek wants to add.
benefiting from
Abhishek.
this.
PK, you know, you're a senior economist, but just a little bit of addition there. You know, import substitution, the moment you mention it, has a certain negative ring to it because of its past association with India and the socialist era. So I have to add there, because whatever import substitution is happening now is essentially being led by the private sector. So there are private sector joint ventures between those Indian firms and their foreign partners, and they are taking the lead there, be it in the defense sector or others. So that import substitution or Atmanirbharta is very different from what happened in the socialist past.
I want to go back to Andrew Ferris, and I want to spend next few minutes
No,
on
absolutely. I mean,
infrastructure.
there's
on
no
infrastructure,
question that this-
you know what happens is, what happens is, I want to go back to infrastructure. I don't want to get into just defense and import substitution, etc. I take your point, Abhishek. But see, we have an election next year, Andrew.
Right? Jim.
Right, yeah, no, we have an election next year, Andrew, and we need this to be a growth-oriented budget, of course. You know, economists want fiscal deficit prudence, etc., etc. But with the kind of growth possibilities that the country has, and also the political factors, you know, you would want to spend more in pro-people schemes. Can you still afford to, and should we go all out in our infrastructure push, Andrew? Even if it comes at the cost of taking a bit of leeway on these macro numbers.
Yes. Look, there's a very simple set of numbers here. Okay, the GDP growth of India in 22 was 8.7, in 23 was 7, and the 24 is likely to be 6.5. So India has been decelerating for 3 years. Fair enough, because of the COVID, because of the global situation. So now injection on infrastructure is very important. And here is where sometimes the money has been spent, but not spent widely, because we still go backwards and forwards on the area of transportation, on the area of railways, on the area of roads, and on the area of, let's say, even to the extent of airport building. Also, unfortunately, we cannot get away from the issue of decarbonization and the reduction of CO2 in the economy. And this could be easily combined with subsidies towards the area where India is a leader, and that is in solar energy and also in wind energy. And that is a combination of both investment and also climate policy. So it will be very interesting to see what happens there.
So would we expect then, in that case, Nasir,
Yeah, I think
more? PK. Yeah, PK.
I think, you know, just looking at industrial performance, for instance, you know, the World Steel Association just published data on steel production in 2022, and India, of course, is the second biggest producer of steel. But if you look at the top 10 producers of steel in the world, or the top 9, the only one of the top 9 steel producers in the world that saw steel output actually increase in 2022 was India. China's steel output declined. India's increased, in the latest month, increased more than 9%. So we're seeing a structural shift. And, you know, steel, I think, is really quite important to any industrializing economy. India is now the second biggest producer. Last year, about 125 million tons of steel. If you look back at history, only one country has ever produced more than 125 million tons of steel in a year, and that is, of course, China. China produces 8 times as much, but China has massive overcapacity, and the world needs to address the issue.
Well, I think we should go. Okay, so my own take is, PK. My take is, PK, that this is the time for us to go all out. Let us bet on ourselves. I say, MR, bet on ourselves. Let all the doomsday talkers go to hell. Let us focus. Let us spend more on urban infrastructure. Let us still give the money to the states. Let us increase Gati Shakti outlay. Right? Let us increase our infrastructure pipeline. Let us increase our special financing schemes. Let's bet on ourselves.
Exactly. This is the moment, Arnab. We should seize it. And the government, in fact, should not be bothered about doomsayers talking about 6.5% fiscal deficit or 4.5% fiscal deficit. It is meaningless number. And I don't want a nanny out there to tell me what my BP should be or what my sugar should be. I know very well what it is, and I will manage because I am different. I am genetically different. I can manage myself.
Jim.
I have a huge domestic saving of 30%. Jim, you understand we have a huge domestic saving at 30%.
Did you just refer to Jim as a nanny?
Well.
He did. He did.
No,
As you know,
of course, Arnab, of course.
I love these budget programs on
India.
Republic.
It's one of my favorite countries in the world, but I care about your
Don't
children.
add this
I care
bucket
about
ifs,
your
Roger.
grandchildren.
Roger, come
you
clean.
don't care
Come
about
clean.
your
It is the
children
time
and
to
your
invest in India.
grandchildren. I do.
See, you understand one thing. My fiscal deficit gets funded by my own domestic savings. My total borrowing from the outside world is less than 1% of my GDP. And if it comes, it comes. It doesn't come, it doesn't come. I manage my own capital. I manage my own fiscal deficit. I fund my own banks. The world doesn't fund me. So you understand, I'm a most stable country. And I have chosen a path of investment, recycling my enormous savings. Today, understand, my saving at a $3 trillion economy at 30% works out to close to $1 trillion. Where do I park it? I have to park it within myself, and I do it through the borrowings of the government, and I do it through the public sector banks.
Yeah.
What is your problem in this?
I don't know his problem. Every year I hope his problem goes away, Sohail. Every year he comes back with a bigger problem.
My problem is history and economics. History shows that
Jim's
if you
issues
debase
are
your
like
currency
Rahul
and your
Gandhi's.
balance sheet,
They have
you
a problem
suffer in the
for every
long run.
solution. If you
Look
give them
at
a
history
solution,
if
they
you
will
don't
present a
under-
problem.
if you don't understand economics, look at history.
No, 1 minute.
Okay, what's
Wisdom doesn't necessarily come with age. You don't have to be a great economist in order to understand the economy. By that logic, a lot of entrepreneurs who then make it big in the world would have never. I mean, you have celebrated college dropouts, not we. You've celebrated school dropouts, not we. Jim, we reiterate the following, and your point is valid. The future of India is not going to be driven by Americans or Fijians or Norwegians. It'll be driven by Indians. Indians have shown over the past few years the following facets. Number one, great consumptive economy. Number two, tremendous resilience. Number three, the ability to innovate and to reimagine and recalibrate without disturbing the structure, the basic structure of the economy. Which country, Jim, tell me, would have done what it did for its people, what India did during the pandemic? Which country? Which prime minister would have taken a punt of shutting the country down? After we shut the country down, all you guys in the West followed, which is not surprising. We are a civilizational legacy. Y'all are Johnnies or Jims come lately. Number three, which country would have given free ration, free food to people who were going through the most devastating times in their lives due to the pandemic? So, Jim, cut us some slack. The last time we learned a lesson from someone in the West was in 1947. But when we unfurled that flag, we took charge of our own destiny. We became responsible. We're not an irresponsible country. We're not. We're not Pakistan. I think you've blurred the lines when you look at the subcontinent. We're not Pakistan. This is a country whose democracy has shown repeatedly that responsibility is embedded in not only our constitution, but in our hearts and in our minds. So we welcome your comments, we welcome your criticism, but we have a response which is both ethical as well as embedded in knowledge.
Oh, beautiful. He goes there. That's going to be a viral speech out there. And ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, how the markets are looking. We're going to be joined by Madhusudan Kela, Sushil Kedia, and many of our panelists, including Dipan Mehta, joining us in a few minutes. Please come back. We have to take a short commercial break. See you on the other side.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them. and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers, I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs to India.
India is undoubtedly the global bright spot. Now the world is watching whether Budget 2023 will be a catalyst to India's growth story. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं, और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है.
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also, we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
Businessman जो है
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक।
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं। मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं। आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास सो आई नो, बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है।
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है। एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है, स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है।
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी कोई की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं। वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स का जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए। तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार
Okay, that's Nirmala Sitharaman, and Nirmala Sitharaman is standing there with members of her finance ministry team, and Abhishek will explain what happens next. Abhishek, Nirmala is leaving. Maybe you can explain the symbolism as we always do. She doesn't carry the briefcase.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right, so she carries the Bahi Khata now, the red one with the golden emblem of India. And inside is an iPad Ornab, so it does not carry the budget documents now. That thing has been discontinued now. It's all digital. And she's showing it the budget in the iPad in a digital form. I think that was done post-pandemic. The entire team there with the Finance Secretary as Somanathan also there, and the two ministers, of course, Minister of State. And now from here she goes to the President of India. As is customary, she presents the budget to the President. She comes back, has another tie-to-tie with the team, and then comes to the Parliament where she gives the budget to the Cabinet for approval.
Yeah, and she's been holding all these, 8 pre-budget meetings with 7 stakeholder groups. A lot of people took part in the meetings. Union Minister of States for Finance, senior officers from the Ministry of Finance, secretaries, or those who are from other ministries. And this time, she also chaired her first pre-budget meeting with the first group of captains from industries. So she's had all the pre-budget rounds. And I would say right now, I wouldn't be wrong to say that Nirmala Sitharaman is an experienced hand. in the finance ministry by now, and she has really surprised people with the direction she has given and the composure she's shown in very, very difficult times, Abhishek.
She has
very
been
difficult times.
Very steady hand. Very steady hand in shepherding the budgets, Arnab. And in fact, all through the pandemic years, remember, she has been helming these schemes like the PM Kisan Yojana, the PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, and the balancing act she has done with all these schemes that were essentially social sector schemes that put a lot of strain on the finances of the government. With the fiscal numbers, for example, we are told that we are going to keep the fiscal deficit targets and of course aided in good measure by the uptick in revenues that we have seen. But the fact of the matter is she has really kept a steady hand on the budget numbers, and I think she has not given any reason for the likes of Jim Rogers to complain.
Well, markets are going to be opening soon. I'm joined by Dipan Mehta and Madhusudan Kela. And of course, Sushil Kedia. To start with you, Madhusudan, good morning. What is the lookout? The markets have been facing volatility for the last few weeks. Now there was the smooth sailing of the Adani FPO, so at least that, was out of the way. So it's been a very nervous week in the markets, hasn't it? And now the budget. How does it look this morning?
So good morning, Arnab. Thanks for having me here. I feel quite optimistic about the budget. I feel the government's financial situation is in a great shape. I've been monitoring budget for last 20 years. This is the best financial conditions I have seen, wherein what the government projected last year, whether it is in terms of revenue, they have significantly surpassed it. And essentially because of the higher subsidy on account of higher food subsidy and on account of higher fertilizer subsidy, but for that, India's situation would have been even far better. So going into next year now, because the subsidies are not going to get repeated, so we are going to end up with paying some 5.6 lakh crore rupees of subsidy this year. I expect that number to be below 4 lakh crore rupees provided in this budget. And this year, the dividend income which came from RBI was also only 30,000 crores. So there is a leg room for RBI to give more dividend to the government to the extent of at least 1 lakh of crore rupees. So the government is starting with 2 lakh plus crore rupees of opening balance, if I may say it. So they have a lot of leg room to kickstart, expenditure, and I am very sure they will lead it from the front in this budget.
So what will the markets cheer for, Sushil?
Arnab, markets have in last 45 budgets never continued to go down if they were already down. So this Adani fiasco has already demoralized the market. So the risk of a large upside noise broadly on the indices remains.
No, explain this to me. Explain this to me. You're saying the Adani issue is not over? Because it got fully subscribed, though of course it was only because of the high interest from the non-institutional investors and many family offices. You're saying it's not over?
Adani issue getting subscribed does not mean Adani issue may be over, because it's only 20,000 crores for who was the world's third largest man, and the uncertainty inside markets about the stuck positions. So we cannot just write it off that it's all over. Hindenburg is still.
So what impact does it have overall beyond Adani?
Of course, it creates, of course, a removal of one big hindrance that FPO, if it would have bombed, would have become a real crisis. So the fight is on, and Adani is right now scoring.
Okay, so 1 minute. Interesting comment here this morning coming in from Sushil Kedia. Madhusudan, you've been a little cautious in your comments on Adani. Sushil, quite clear. He's saying the Adani issue is not over. It's just been handled. He's sort of giving the sense it's just been handled for the moment, right, Sushil? That's what you're saying.
See, it's always better to be a little risk-averse and cautious. Let the markets reveal what unfolds
So
next.
why is that significant on budget day, Sushil?
No, it's not really significant in the sense that last 45 years of budgets, markets, if they were continuing to go down ahead of the budget, were already demoralized and ready mentally to receive positively what the finance ministers say. only thrice in last 45 years, markets have continued to go up if they were going up and never continued to go down if they were going down. So I think the mental base is ready to welcome a lot of things the finance minister may say today.
I would have thought that
I
would have thought, Madhusudan, that people would be a bit relieved today after they wanted the markets would want the attention away from Adani. You know, it's been such a sort of a wet towel on everyone's optimistic mood over the last 4 days. Madhusudan.
I will simplify for you. What Sushil is trying to say is right. Basically, market has become lighter, and that is what you need when going into the budget. The expectations were low. There was this hangover of capital gains tax. I think it is quite unlikely that will get disturbed significantly in the coming budget. The people's positions, technical position of the market is very light. And if there is nothing untoward which happens in the budget, and I'll just emphasize this point, nothing untoward in the form of capital gains tax, then I think market is set for a very good rebound and good days ahead. And as far as this Adani issue is concerned, now the hump is over. What we should say that, you know, this was one of the largest FPO being done in the current year, done by one of the largest group. That hump is over. So from a market perspective,
I'm sorry, but I can't resist a question on Adani. Your comment. I'm sorry, I can't avoid a question. Your comments on India's biggest family offices, biggest groups, coming and helping Adani out. Unusual, isn't it? People are commenting on so much fraternity within the Indian corporate space.
But in a way, it is good now to see people standing by when it comes to India's credibility. It is great to see that people are standing by to protect in a way India's credibility, because what would have happened, would have been really ugly had this FPO not got subscribed. For the whole of India, it was not only a question of one group, right? So it is good to see that people coming together and ensuring that it went through. And I must go on to say that I have had a good fortune of knowing Gautam Bhai for last 20 years. He is a man who has proven unprecedented execution in the last 20 years, and obviously created a lot of wealth for shareholders. So there is no reason for me to believe that the Adani story will not continue. Stock prices are a different thing. They are dependent on buying and selling. But Adani's story in terms of execution, in my opinion, will continue on the ground.
Yeah, I just also been saying recently to people that at the end of the day, please remember, Hindenburg is a short seller. They are not investigative journalists. As some people would like us to believe. Are you there, Deepan? Now is the line with you there? Deepan,
yes,
I can't see you on the screen.
I'm there now.
Deepan, good morning.
Good morning.
Deepan, what are the markets going to cheer for?
Yeah, good morning, Arnab. Thanks for having me on your show. I think markets will cheer for stability as far as capital gains tax is concerned. I think that's really the only looming sword on the market. And if there is no tinkering done over there, be it with the holding period or the actual tax rates, I think we will go back all much more happier and at a better frame of mind. So I think that's the real requirement of the market. Apart from that, we want the interest rates to be softer going forward, because major industries like real estate and automobile are revving up and they are dependent on lower interest rates. So if the government borrowing is subdued, curtailed, and it provides more resources to the private sector, and I think that will be an added benefit. But I think all the focus is on the capital gains. And of course, if there's any relaxation on the personal taxation, it will really bring about the feel-good factor in the market. So let's keep our fingers crossed over here.
And what do you think? I mean, do you think the government can deliver on the proposal to shift the tax liability on buyback of shares from companies to individual shareholders? I mean, I've been hearing that if that happens, then the markets will really rally.
Yeah, I think that will be received quite positively, because it is good for the companies per se, and it will perhaps encourage more companies to go for buyback, and it's a fair way of taxing as well. So I don't think that that's going to be a bit of an issue going forward as well. But I think the bigger issues are with government borrowings, as well as with personal taxation and capital.
You mentioned government borrowings. You mean are the markets going to be very affected by the fiscal deficit?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the time where we need interest rates to be under control. We need more resources for private lending, be it to retail or to corporates. We are seeing an upcycle in the capex spending of large corporates, and that needs to be supported by lower interest rates. I think in any case, I think exports are going to be impacted by recession overseas. So we need to focus on sectors and industries which are strongly domestic focused, like real estate and like automobiles. And of course, the capital goods, which after many years, we are seeing